Camden National Bank is celebrating 150 years of supporting the communities of Maine and New Hampshire. And it's all thanks to you. From one location in Camden to 72 banking centers today, our journey has only been possible because of your trust and loyalty. One thing that remains constant is our commitment to giving back, from supporting local businesses at Autumn Gold in Ellsworth, sponsoring the Seaside series in Stonington, to helping the elderly at Acadia Senior College. We're grateful to have this vibrant community be part of our story. And thank you to our partners, Down East Famous, that's celebrating the people who make this region so special. Here's to the next 150 years together.
Welcome back to the Down East Famous podcast. My name is Jena Young, and I'm here with my co-host, April Shaw-Beaudoin. We are very excited for today's guest. Joanna Fogg Sky is here from Bar Harbor Oyster Company, and we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Yes. So Joanna is someone who has really taught us how to farm the ocean with heart and sustainability. It's something that didn't exist to this level before in this area, and it's very inspiring to see what you've built. I know I've eaten many of your oysters in many of the restaurants here on the island, and it's just impressive to see what you've created. I'd love for listeners to hear a little bit about the journey that you took from where you were to farming oysters in Frenchman's Bay. It's incredible.
Sure. So I grew up on the island, and I've always been interested in working on the water in different capacities and being near the water and in the water. I just have that kind of in my heart and in my blood, I think. And I've worked on the water in different capacities for most of my life. So I, as soon as I was like old enough for someone to take me on a lobster boat, I was a sternman and did that for several years, and then got interested in tall ships and sailing, and then got jobs on private yachts. I was fortunate enough to have gigs where I was sailing all across the world and through the West Indies and the Mediterranean, and was making good money and, having fun and doing that kind of in the winters and then doing that in the summers here. But I got to a point where I wanted to be settled down a little bit more, and I wanted something that had a little bit more meaning to me. So while sailing was fun and beautiful on fancy private yachts, it didn't really have the essence, or like kind of, it was a little bit hollow for me. And I knew that I wanted to be in this area, and I was interested in working for myself and having my only boss be, you know, the sky and the sea and the patch of weather that's in between it. So I started thinking about different things. My partner at the time was a marine engineer and was, you know, also very skilled with things on the water. We just sort of thought of oyster farming. We're like, all right, we looked into different things. We looked into finfish farming, couldn't really get behind it. We're wary of the future of wild harvesting, particularly of lobsters and things. We were, you know, both college educated people who understood what was happening with climate and fisheries in Maine, and wanted to do something that was a little bit different. I might offer, some resiliency and sustainability in ways that maybe weren't coming together exactly in this area. So we knew nothing about oyster farming. We seriously were like started talking to people, like looking at YouTube. Like I kind of learned how to be an oyster farmer from talking to people and watching YouTube, and then a school of very hard knocks. But yeah, we started really small. I was still working on yachts and started like the leasing process. So the body of water that we farm is state waters. And it took us about a year to complete our application to submit to the Department of Marine Resources and the Army Corps of Engineers to get permission to lease that body of water. And then it took us about 2 years to get approved. So it was a really lengthy process. The state had designed a way for you to start like really small on like a 1 year kind of a limited purpose site is what they call it. Beforehand. So we like got our application going and went through this 3-year process to actually get this lease, and started really small on like an experimental spot in the area where we wanted to farm. So yeah, we put some seeds in the water, got a few cages, and just figured out like, can we grow oysters? Will they be good? How's this going to work? Wow. And maintained our other jobs to support ourselves. And yeah, started really small. In 2016, we were granted our 22.5-acre lease. And I've been farming the same body of water in Thomas Bay or Mount Desert Narrows since then.
The fact that you didn't come from any type of oyster farming background or schooling makes it so much more impressive. I was already impressed.
Thank you. It's more, I mean, there were a lot of things. So I graduated from College of the Atlantic. I'm a human ecologist, and I have never felt more like I'm using my degree as a human ecologist as I do as an entrepreneur and a sea farmer. So there are so many facets to this that I would have never imagined were possible. And I think I had a lot of skills that were transferable from just working in the water in different ways, and having to like the interconnectedness of those skills and understandings and knowledge and problem solving, and a little bit of grit, or maybe a lot of grit, really prepared me to give it a go anyway.
Well, one part about your story that I remember being a bystander was how long it took to get the approval and the pushback that came from having this out in Frenchman Bay.
Yep.
And I'm curious, in that 3-year period, was it a 3-year period? Yeah. Did you have doubts? Were there times where you thought, maybe we shouldn't do this?
Yes. Yes, there certainly were. Fortunately, I feel like there's a pretty strong community of sea farmers that we felt supported by. The leasing process itself, there's a lot of kind of like checks and balances, and it should be somewhat strict or stringent. Like, we're using state waters. Like, this is everybody's water. Like, we need to prove that we know what we're doing and we're not going to mess it up. It could have been a faster process. There were some meetings that I was at. I was actually like 7 months pregnant, and I was at a meeting, and some people who were not interested in overseeing our farm or looking at our farm said that it was going to attract birds that were going to come down and hit the elementary school in Trenton, and it was going to kill babies.
Naturally.
And I was standing there with like no friends in the room, like 7 months pregnant. And it was like, okay, all right. Like not what I thought I was getting into.
Right.
But the longer I do it and the more people I talk to, I'm so confident that this is what I needed to do, and I'm proud of it. And I think that there were very few people who could have done what I was just in like the right place at the right time with the right skills and the right climate and history, essentially. And so I'm really, I feel privileged.
Kind of when you know it was meant to be, when it happens like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to ask more questions around the actual oysters and how you found your success, but I want to give April a moment as well.
When you say you put seeds in the water, what does that mean?
Yeah, so oysters are native to Maine. They're not native to the specific bay that I farm them in. And so every year we buy oyster seed or spat from a licensed hatchery. So they basically have a nursery system that controls the temperature and the algae, and they've got it down literally to a science, which I don't have. And I buy that seed that is it's a Maine native strand, and I buy it from them and I put it out onto the farm in bags that are in cages that float on the surface in our growing season, and we sink to the bottom in the winter. When I first bought oysters, I believe it was, I think my first order was like 75,000 oysters, which sounded like a lot. I was like, oh, I'm going to bring the truck, I'm going to come down here, and I handed over a big check, and they handed me a cooler that I could have put a 12-pack in. I was like, all right. But yeah, so I buy seed every year. I grow a 3-year oyster. So that is a little bit longer than a lot of other oysters on the market. The growth rate is dependent on a few different things. One of them predominantly temperature. So oysters are only putting on new shell growth when the sea is like 50, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, which for us is only about half of the year. So a southern oyster, it can be 1-2 years, but ours is only growing half the year. And so we have a 3-year oyster. We think that ends up meaning our oysters have a better shell quality because we do a lot of handling on them, and the flavor we think is more matured and kind of seasoned in the miroir of our cold waters. But more effort goes into a 3-year oyster than a 1 or a 2-year oyster, and so we need to get a little bit more back from that as well.
Yeah, is that what you attribute the uniqueness of your oyster to, is the length that it spends in the water?
Not just that. So the French word for it is miroir. So it's the flavor of the sea with wine, terroir, the flavor of the land. There are only 5 species of oysters commercially harvested or farmed in the U.S. and only about 8 on the planet. So if you're eating oysters between Florida and Canada, basically, you're eating the same species of oyster. They're almost all Crassostraea virginica, Eastern American oysters. But what makes each one of them different is the grow out method and the body of water that they're in. So each bay has its own flavor. Each kind of oyster reef has its own sound. Even oysters even know when they're home. They're like more productive. Studies have shown because they know the sound of their own reefs. So each one can be really different. And if you're used to tasting oysters, there are oyster sommeliers, so you can tell like the different sort of flavors and textures and length of them. The flavor of ours will change over the course of the season, depending on climate and the algae or the phytoplankton that's in the water that they're feeding. Adult oysters eat 50 gallons of water, filter 50 gallons of water a day, so they very much are what they eat. And that improves water clarity and also helps them like take on the flavor. So if there's been like a large rain event, they might taste different than if it's been dry for a few weeks. And they definitely change flavor over the course of the season, particularly in the fall. They know without a brain, they know that the water is getting cooler and they start storing up their glucose, which is sweet. So oysters in the fall are really sweet and meaty because they're storing up basically to kind of hibernate. They're like storing up all of their sugars because they know they're going to be cold for the winter. They're not going to be growing. They're fattening up essentially, and that makes them really delicious in those fall months.
There's so much I didn't know about oysters. I mean, really, I'm like... So from the outside, it seemed like you all started what you were doing and it was a very quick success. Is that how it felt to you, first of all, is my first question? No?
No.
Okay. Because that on the outside, it seemed like there was so much buildup to you being able to use the water in the way that you wanted. So tell me how it really was. Like, set the record straight.
There were so many unknowns and so many, thankfully, we were able to have jobs outside of oyster farming, and a lot of other sea farmers do, but we were able to be employed and kind of like work up to scale. So we had filled up as much of like the smaller lease spaces as we could, and we're very grateful that we actually got our standard lease kind of when we had to have it, when it was like, if we don't get this space, we're going to lose our crop because we can't put it at a stocking density that's appropriate for optimal growth. So we got there, but the unknown is really hard. And you're constantly, when you're building a farm, we wanted to do it with as little debt as possible. So we were funding it with our other jobs, and we needed boats, and we needed gear, and we needed insurance, and we needed seed. Seed is really costly, and we had to put all of that into the water, like literally just like dumping tens of thousands of dollars into the water, knowing that if we got our lease, we would still need to wait 3 years before we had a market-sized oyster. So those 6 years were pretty long. And then you also don't know if your oyster is going to be any good, right? You're like, this might not, like how, but I think I would be bored if it weren't challenging. I mean, there were days when I was like, yeah, you feel like tossing in the towel, but I've had a lot of support, and I believe in it. I believe in it. Like, we're growing a hyper local food that is cleaning the water. Oysters are amazing for water quality. They don't just clean it, they're also like, they sequester carbon from the water. So they de-acidify the water in order to make their shells. Their shells are like carbon sinks. So they're making the water better in a climate that is rapidly changing. The Gulf of Maine is one of the fastest warming bodies of water on the planet. So by eating oysters and farming oysters and adding that shell growth and that water clarity, we're kind of maintaining as best as we can the waters that are so dear to who we are and so essential. And it's just, I think as Mainers, we've grown up using the water and living near the water and loving the water. And we have a long history of fishing, and it would be tragic if we didn't have a diversity of species. Like, we've been kind of harvesting a monoculture with lobster for years, and I hope that does well. I want it to coexist, but I think that we'd be foolish to be putting all of our eggs in one basket, and we can't just rely on that. And things are changing. Things are changing fast. 1 in 6 people who have commercial fishing licenses also have aquaculture licenses. So we're starting to see a little bit of an overlap. I think it's, Mainers are sometimes resistant to change. And I think there's a lot of cultural heritage, a lot of cultural heritage in our fisheries. But I think the wise ones are realizing that if you've got skills and boats and things on the water that you can apply, to transfer that and diversify what you can catch or grow, you might be in a better position, and your kids might be in a better position. So I think kind of building that, even though there are days, to get back to your question, that are long and it seems like it's never going to happen, I didn't see another alternative for producing food that had sustainability and longevity that would help us kind of maintain the culture of our working waterfront. And to be able to produce food here. I mean, like I said, I feel extremely privileged to lease this body of water. And because we're in such a high, there's such a high populated in the summer area in our harvest season, we don't move anything. We harvest and deliver 2 times a week. We've got, my biggest boat is 28 feet long. So we're very small. We're on little outboards that are quieter than your lawnmowers. And we offload into a regular size pickup truck that has a reefer unit on the back, and we deliver across the island. I don't have to ship anything beyond the Trenton Bridge, and we can sell 500,000 oysters a year that way.
So all of your product stays on the island.
I have moved things in the past. I've sold stuff in the winters before just to kind of make payroll, because I have crew who, need to pay their rent, right? But our market dries up pretty significantly in the winter. Winter harvesting is demanding and dangerous and unreliable. And so if I ship oysters beyond the MDI area, I get less of a price for them, and it costs me more. And it also doesn't allow me any time to recuperate and work on my business or my family or myself. So we've stopped harvesting in the winter for a couple of months and keep everything local, because we can sell out locally anyway. And it allows us to just have, nothing is delivered more than 15 miles away from where we land it.
Extra sustainable, even more sustainable. April, have you had an opportunity to try a Bar Harbor Blonde?
I haven't.
I can't believe I didn't bring any oysters. You will.
We need to put this on the calendar.
Do you eat
oysters?
I do.
Okay.
I love oysters.
I have a really important question to ask you. What is the best way to eat an oyster?
The best way to eat. Okay, I like my oysters quite cold. I'm kind of a purist. I will dabble in fun and different mignonettes, but the best way to eat an oyster is really cold, and maybe with a little bit of lemon or not. I mean, I eat my oysters with nothing a lot of the time, because I want to know I want to taste what I'm actually eating. But yeah, really cold by the water is amazing. I have a little bit of a cold water swimming and sauna habit, and I love eating oysters after getting out of the sauna, because it really
it feels like
dive. It feels like dive. Yeah, get out, go do a cold water dip, get into the sauna, get out of the sauna, house some oysters. That's the best way to do it.
That is a great answer.
I have a really important question. How many oysters do you eat a year?
A year? Oh, wow. I don't know. I have a few oysters a week just to taste them. What's going on? I need to shuck you and see what's up. I mean, hundreds.
Yeah.
Probably a couple hundred a year.
Yeah. I think that's fun. You said you sold 500,000. I want to know how many you got to keep for yourself.
And for those who don't know, in the winter, I do buy your oysters in the winter, especially around Christmas. It's a tradition. For people in my family, you can go to Joanna's garage, and it's basically honor system. And you pick up, right? Isn't it fun? Yeah, you pick up oysters, you write down what you took, you leave your money, and you go home and you have fresh oysters. Yeah.
Amazing.
So that is, I don't know if you know how many families have that as a tradition.
It's great. No, I mean, I'm what's nice is that time of year. I mean, yeah, we do. So we definitely will harvest through Christmas and New Year's, because there's a bump then. Oysters are great. And I want our harvest to move that time of year. And I'm usually a little bit less busy, which means I get to see when locals and neighbors are coming around. And
to your house.
Yeah,
in your garage.
Actually to my house, in my garage. Yeah. And I love that. It's so gratifying. I mean, it's so farm to table. I raised them for 3 years, and my neighbors are coming to buy them. It is so gratifying. And it just kind of, I mean, food is so important, right? It is such an essential. When COVID, happened, we were one of the, businesses that were deemed essential. And there were times when you would go to the market and the shelves were bare. And I think that was the first time that I really realized how important food security was, and how it was oh, I have 22 acres of protein. And oysters are a superfood. They're full of zinc and omegas and B vitamins and magnesium, things you're not getting anywhere else or frequently anywhere else, and like at ratios that your body can actually utilize like really proficiently. They're great for recovery and immunity and just feeling good. And it's like, oh, we've got acres of superfood here. Like, we're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that Maine can be proud of, whether it's my company or like Maine has some of the best oysters on the planet, and I think it's something we can be really proud of.
Absolutely.
Is there any collaboration that you do with other oyster farmers around Maine?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, when we're short on supply, we will buy from other farms. I do buy, because I have my dealer's license and delivery channels, I'll buy from smaller outer islands that don't have those avenues for selling their market. We share our tools and ideas and collaborate. It's a pretty political world out there too. So like there are a lot of times when we need to come together at meetings and at the legislature to like stand up for, kind of protecting our sector or for helping expand our sector. I think it is one of the most collaborative sectors out there, actually. I don't feel competitive with other oyster farmers. There is enough demand out there. This is one of the most sustainable proteins on the planet. Like, this is just where we need to be moving. So I'm not, I don't feel competition with other oyster farmers because I think there's enough demand, and we need each other. We really, we're really all in the same, we're all in the same boat.
It's similar. It echoes a lot of conversations I've had with Mid-Coast business owners, that there is such a collaborative spirit among business owners, and not even in the same industry, but in the Mid-Coast, there's a united front that business owners can have. And I think that's special to Maine. I've lived in Boston. I've lived on the seacoast of New Hampshire for decades. I grew up in Maine. And I just think that's something that's really special. And I've loved what Jena and I are doing too, is helping connect the people to the place, the business owner to the person to the place. I think it's really special about Maine. And I don't think a lot of the country is in that same.
I think there's kind of this like sense of kind of pride and community, and it can be resilient to change, but like if you're in, you're like it's tight. And there's something really beautiful about that. And I mean, a rising tide raises all ships. Like it's very true, I think, on the working waterfront.
So I have one of my questions that I haven't asked yet and you haven't answered. And it is, as someone who is rooted in the working waterfront, what are your hopes for the future of Bar Harbor? And what is your role in shaping what comes next?
That is a great question. I hope that we can continue to maintain the quality of our natural beauty, as well as be economically sustainable. So there's always kind of a fine balance. I think there's sometimes a potential conflict between businesses growing and thriving and things taking up too much space or taking up too much resource. And my hope is that we can find that balance and strike it and run with it, so that we're not growing too big, but we're big enough to get by. I don't expect to get rich farming oysters, but it would be nice to cover my expenses and have health insurance for my daughter and take care of those things without taking too much. I feel like that scale of visitors and production, and it's a really delicate balance. And my hope is that we as a company can find that, and that it can fit in with the rest of the community that is also finding that in whatever line that is.
Yeah, definitely is clear that sustainability is very important to you and how you run your company. I just want to reflect back to you. I one of my questions was to ask you, what do you think the key to your success has been? What do you think it is? Because I want to tell you what I feel it is, but I want to hear from you first.
Well, thank you for saying that you think I'm successful, because sometimes I don't. I'm getting by. I think having an open mind and a willingness to work hard, and being able to see things, I guess, maybe from a lot of different angles, and transparency. Like I'm pretty pure about what I do. Like I'm not like I'm me. And that's like the story kind of sells itself because just true and kind of plain.
True. And by success, I don't always mean like a number on a piece of paper, but you're finding joy in what you're doing, which is for many people the definition of success. And what I hear from you when you're talking is how much your business aligns with your values as a person.
That's it.
And people can feel that. And we can feel that. I'm sure listeners can feel that. It's that what you are doing is so true to who you are at your core that it creates joy in your life. And that's your success, right? And yes, I do hope that you can have health insurance for your child. And like, that's the other version of success, but it really comes across when you're talking about your business, how aligned it is for you.
I think I found my niche, my channel. I'm grateful I've had the opportunity to build what I've built.
That's amazing.
All right. So what are some of the other aspects about living on MDI that do connect you to this place? What do you love so much about MDI? Because you've been all over the world in really beautiful places and you came back.
Yeah, we have such a beautiful landscape and seascape, and I feel connected to it and a part of it, like on a cellular level. And to be outside and working in the elements and to feel like I'm amongst that and a part of that gives me a sense of connectivity and authenticity that just, it makes me feel alive. And I can just, can really feel, well, it's gratitude. I think a lot of it is just gratitude for like that experience. I grew up on the island. My family grew up on the island, some of them. And there's like kind of some longevity there that I think is important. And I also feel like what I'm doing is creating a future, which hopefully my daughter is interested in. But if not, there are a lot of like, there needs to be a future. And I think it's something that I'm hopeful about. Whereas other lines of work I might think are taking away maybe or would be lost.
What you're doing is so impressive and interesting, but it's also out in the middle of a bay that so many people don't see. I think the reason I didn't understand what you were doing is because I've never actually seen it. Is there a way for people to see what you're doing out there?
So yes and no. We get asked for tours pretty frequently, and we don't have boats that actually bring people out there. I don't have the capacity. All of our boats are focused on running farm operations, but we do partner with a kayak company so that people can come and take kayak tours and come visit the farm. We love having people out there. It is one of the most gratifying parts of my day is when we have a group of people who have paddled out, with their own steam out to the farm and actually see what it looks like and get to talk to us and taste our oysters. So you can book, there's a hyperlink on our website. You can book through the kayak company to come out and see us. We're in public waters. So if you've got a boat or, even at low tide, if you want to wade out, a paddleboard, swim, we're always happy to say hi. People are welcome on our farm. And it's shared waters. So that is possible to come out and do that.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I want to do that now.
Yeah. You should.
April and I need to kayak out
you should.
and see you.
There's a lot of footage on our website. I think one of the things that has been a challenge for Mainers kind of understanding of sea farming is not having that visual. And so a lot of people don't really know, like, what does it look like? I've had school groups come out. I love working with kids and trying to show them what it's about. But I've had a fourth grade group was out on my farm once. And, I've got 800 cages out there. It's 22 acres. We are in the middle of my oyster farm. And the kid's like, where's the farm? And I'm like, you're in it, buddy.
You're on top of it.
Yeah. So, we think of farming, we picture like silos and cows and pigs. And as Mainers, we think of fishing as like, all right, so it's like lobsters or offshore. And we're like really in between. We're like neither and both. And I think that's one thing that just, I love showing people and teaching people is like, we're farmers, but we're farming in the wild environment of the sea. And, it's just kind of this like integrated mix of things that is really beautiful.
Right. If people want to find Bar Harbor Blondes or support Bar Harbor Oyster Company, what is the best way for them to do that?
So our website is barharboroysterco.com. You can find all of the restaurants that we deliver to. You can find our honor system, how to buy directly from us. Our Instagram handle is at Bar Harbor Oyster Co. You can see what we're doing. We have a marine biologist on the team, so we do lots of posts of like the kind of stuff that we're seeing out there. We highlight our crew, tell stories, things like that. So we're pretty easy to find. If you Google Bar Harbor Oyster Company, we'll pop up. We're pretty easy to find.
That's the way of the world.
Yeah, but we're really only on Mount Desert Island, so you're not going to find our stuff very far beyond that. You've got to come.
You
to
have
try
to
it.
come
Yeah.
here to this beautiful
Yeah.
place. Oh my gosh. Well, Joanna Fogg, thank you so much for being with us today. This was enlightening and fun. So
Thank
we
you.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was great.
Right.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.